Oh, you're so sweet.
Mike, anything?
I don't have anything.
I appreciate that, son.
Things are going well. We actually have a lot of kids. We have the circulation of a county.
People that feel that way are just jealous as well.
41 kids.
Would you bring that up?
Yeah, sure.
I think that's important that people understand the scope of it.
Yeah.
There's more out there. There's one here.
I'm at a,
Every audit.
what's sounds good.
What?
Disregard.
What?
There was a post the other night. It was really hard. Usually I ignore things. It was gonna get really, it was like 10:30
Thank
and I
you.
would have texted. And some lady, her last name's like Rogers or something. I'll have to go.
I have-
check, and I think the post has been deleted.
My nephew spent the night at my house last
I'm
night.
thinking
Since you're,
I got
You have a
home.
nephew?
the Chronicle article.
Yes.
since you're asking, I have lengthy prepared remarks. Would you like me to make them at the beginning of the meeting or the end?
But he's listening. The only reason we should listen to this is if we're nosy. You know, why wouldn't you encrypt the radio system so all the comments are in support? But I'm like, what a bizarre statement.
I got home and it was
Yeah, I can't even
Like,
read
what's
social
with
media.
this lady?
my neighbors are from Wisconsin, so they always have.
Like, oh man, there's like 26 comments. I'm like, let's see what this says. And I'm like,
Jen
oh, they're
and
all
Mitch were
supportive.
sitting on the couch.
Good morning. I do have one. I printed it out. Thank you.
Yeah, well, this was 100% we're for it. It was interesting to have a citizen perspective. They're like, why wouldn't you want that? That's great. You know, we shouldn't be listening. You know, who needs to hear the man?
And so he came down and he's gonna spend the day with Kate. He's spent the night
We can talk about the cost of our liability insurance.
How did Kate feel about that?
Because Kate,
How old is
she cleaned out his room upstairs.
And in our administration of it,
Brad, suck it up, boy.
No, he's not 12. He's 12. He's 11.
It's old enough to learn how to suck it up.
Yeah, but this is the one. When he was in preschool. His dad. His dad.
Chief Judge, how are you?
Got me for an uncle and his other
Good.
uncle.
How are you?
Do you want us to shift down so we're all a seat apart?
Whatever you want.
We'll shift.
Sarah, how are you? Good. Good morning. I'm good. How are you? Good.
Going well.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, there's,
Let's remember these.
I haven't identified the others yet.
Please feel free. My attorneys, but I'm not kidding.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I can usually ID his.
Everything's good. How about with you? Everything's fantastic. Things have moved along and progressed nicely in the court system.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's, I mean, you have a lot to be proud of the committee and the county board, and I mean, everybody's working really hard. It's great. It's working. So now the civil side, now we gotta get that back up.
I'll tell you
Oh, I found it.
Evictions and that kind of stuff. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I know.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started with the Judicial Public Safety Committee in just 2 minutes. So I just wanted to remind you, if you're joining us by web conference, to mute your microphone unless you're looking to speak or participate, and we'll be recognizing people from the chair. We also are live streaming, so your mics are on, and it's just a kind reminder. Thank you.
Is this your seat? Yeah. Good morning.
Morning, Paul.
Karen, how you doing? I didn't even see you come in. Hi, Dr. Iqbal. Good to see you. Oh, we got everybody here.
Tilt it down a little bit and you're good to go.
Good morning, Dr. Iqbal. Man, how are you?
Good morning.
I haven't looked yet.
Oh, the thing is,
Good morning, everyone. The time being 9 a.m. on July 16th, I'd like to call the Judicial and Public Safety Committee meeting to order. Our first order of business is I'd like roll call for attendance.
Iqbal? Kenyon? Lewis?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
Sanchez?
Here.
Thomas?
Thank you very much. Looks like we have a quorum. In fact, we have everyone on the committee here, so thank you all for attending. First thing we need to do is I need a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes. Moved by Mr. Sanchez, seconded by Mr. Kenyon. Any additions, deletions, subtractions? Seeing none. Roll call on the minutes.
Iqbal?
Yes.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Sanchez?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
And Leonard?
Minutes are approved. Anyone here for public comment? Seeing none and hearing none on the phone, we'll move on to monthly financials. And we have the pleasure of having Erica Wagner here today to give us our report.
Good morning. The June budget, accounts payable, and P-card report were included in your in your agenda packets for review. In the general fund, the coroner's office is trending over the recommended budget amount for this time of the year in all categories, including salary and benefits. I have been speaking with the coroner's office regarding the trend, and it appears that he has submitted a budget adjustment resolution, and that apparently is his request to correct that overage going through to the end of the fiscal year. So it's something that we do need to look at eventually before the year is over. In the special revenue funds, the funds trending higher than recommended have been reviewed, and all of those funds have enough cash balance to sustain the current expenditures. We'll just continue to monitor those and report to the committee as needed. Thank you.
Very good. Any questions for Ms. Wagner? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to the state's attorney's office, Mr. McMahon.
Good morning. We're starting to see a kind of a return to normal of types of cases, frequency, and the volume of cases coming into the system from really across the county. As you know, Aurora, Elgin tend to be the two primary jurisdictions where criminal cases come in. We're getting ready to resume, and I presume, I don't mean to presume, but maybe the chief judge is going to talk about this, so I'll just touch on it briefly. We're going to start jury trials again back in the Judicial Center beginning the first week in August, so we're getting ready for that process as well. The other big kind of change over the last 10 days really is the request from the county board for the state's attorney's office to assist with the getting the CARES Act program kind of up and running and a process to receive applications, review those applications, and then work with the county board to distribute those funds both internally and externally. And so that's been a major shift in area of responsibility in the last really 10 days. So I know you've got a full agenda. That's my report. I can answer questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. First of all, we'd like to thank you very much for taking on this CARES Act responsibility. It's very time consuming and there's a lot of responsibility to it, but I think everybody feels very comfortable having the State's Attorney's Office involved. So thank you very much for your involvement in that. Any questions for Mr. McMahon? Mr. Martin?
I have one out of curiosity. What kind of a backlog do you anticipate? Well, you mentioned you're going to start jury trials. How long before the tail end of the slinky catches up with?
Well, we're seeing our caseloads, the individual felony caseloads of assistant state attorneys is growing significantly. They have higher caseloads than they've had at any time in the last 10 years. And our overall cases into the system is lower than it was 5-10 years ago, but it's more difficult to resolve cases. It's really too early for me to tell. I don't know that we're going to be, I don't think we're going to be back to what was normal for months. The sheriff, the judiciary, my office, the public defender's office, I think have worked very well to try to manage the jail population, which is a big component of how quickly cases can get through the system. I don't know the exact numbers this morning, but we're at, I don't want to say historically low numbers of jail population or inmates in the jail. So that's a good sign. So we'll work through the system or work the cases through the system. But I don't think we're going to get back to normal until first or second quarter of 2021 at the earliest would be my best estimate today.
And that assumes no flare-ups or?
Absolutely, right.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the state's attorney? Seeing none and hearing none on the phone, thank you very much, Mr. McMahon. Moving on to the sheriff's office, Sheriff Hain.
Good morning. I will jump right to follow up on State's Attorney McMahon's point about our jail population. So our total headcount now is 354. That is historically low, and that actually includes 14 people on electronic monitoring as the program continues to grow. So we are accepting pretrial people, domestic battery offenders on EHM now. So we're excited to see that expansion. And it also includes 35 people who have been sentenced to Department of Corrections. We've actually already had 2 people finish their DOC sentences inside of our facility, as Department of Corrections is not accepting any new inmates. So the Illinois Sheriff's Association, on behalf of all 102 sheriffs in Illinois, are litigating against the state for not accepting inmates. And we do expect reimbursement for each detainee that we've retained for them during this last 4 or 5 months. So yes, actual in custody 306, which is outstanding. And we do remain COVID-free inside the jail. We're very happy to report. On the public safety side, you all may have received the press release yesterday. We're very excited about our relationship with the Homeland Security investigators out of Oak Brook. We assigned 1 full-time deputy there and 1 part-time deputy there. Since January, they've led investigations regionally here that resulted in 1,200 plus pounds of illegal drugs. So that includes cannabis and cocaine, 11 associated firearms, and $5 million in associated cash. So we're very happy with all of their work, and they continue to be incredibly productive with that group. Ahead of later this month's budget presentations, of course, we're forecasting for a rough 2021 and 2022. Earlier this year, we began working on a retirement benefit offer internally. So this targeted employees who had 20 plus years of sheriff's office service time in their pension and could walk out the door at any moment. So we were focused on mid to upper level management and flattening our organizational chart when we put this out there. It was 1 of 3 packages the employees could select. You see the different options there, either county paid health insurance premiums or 2 years of one payment of $15,000. So at this point, they must select this by September 1st and exit by December 1st. As of today, we've had 10 mid and upper level management employees accept this. 3 have already exited, and we do expect 3 to 5 more to select this option. So you get a quick breakdown of what this saves us over time. So over the course of 2021 and 2022, that's a total salary and benefit expense of over $3 million. The expense of the retirement benefit offer for those 10 employees is $327,000. So our total payroll savings over those 2 years is $2.7 million. And we will slow hire those positions and not replace them until we're sure that the county is in a good financial position to continue forward. We also look at new revenue sources. So I have good news to share. We did pass our federal jail inspection to bring back federal detainees. We are at a population number where we can comfortably house them. And we submitted our application to return them. So hopefully later this year, we'll see the return of federal detainees to the Kane County Jail. The treatment center lease, which is still hanging out there waiting on one piece of legislation from Springfield and a final contract with our leasing agent. And electronic monitoring, again, that's not a huge revenue source. However, it keeps our jail population low. I presented last month on the savings between March, April, and May that we've experienced in the Corrections Division with a reduced number of detainees. And we'll continue to use our outside accounts, asset forfeiture, fees, revenues to offset our general fund budget as we prepare for those potentially rough fiscal years. I've been asked to reiterate the continued exigent issue that we face, KaneCom faces, and 16 other entities within Kane County face, and that's our unencrypted radio system. So this, of course, is created by the COVID pandemic. We did not have this issue prior to COVID onset. We do face 10 to 12 calls per day related to COVID. I will also acknowledge court services as they did go out and do home checks. They're also experiencing the same unencrypted conversation about health and people that they're dealing with. So I do have 3 additional examples beyond the last example I played at the previous meeting. And this is all captured in a very short time period. Yep.
Checking your status. Paperwork that says either COVID positive or decontaminated from the hospital. Okay, you heard a copy. You said you are out with him, but he is code 100? $161 is the ambulance. Good. 41 West 952 Main Street, nearest across the Green Road. EMS responding for a baby turning pale, getting cold. Units responding to Maine. Code 100 for this address. Use caution, and the 6-month-old baby is breathing. 157 at disturbance. 1690 Dearborn Avenue off of Crandon McClure. The father of a kid named Daniel has been drinking and refusing to leave. No weapons. 1690 Dearborn. Units going to Dearborn, it's trailer 1515. And we have a code 100. County Engine 3. Engine 3. I don't know if you guys have been around the same protocols. Has she answered any COVID possible questions? We got negatives to all the code 100s. Thank you, County. You're welcome.
It's important to note that, I'm sorry. Ready? Okay. It's important to note that all the code 100 references has been disclosed publicly. So it's no longer a secret code. And this does support many other entities within Kane besides the Sheriff's Office, KaneCom. 16 other municipalities will benefit from this through police and fire services in securing their transmissions and not relaying public health information. And again, we didn't have these conversations prior to the COVID onset. This is completely generated through that. We did cover the cost of the system, and this is the maximum cost. So we put price buffer in there when we estimate $5 million. And of course, annual going forward, if everyone's concerned about how do we pay for this years ahead, it is a sliding scale based on usage of each entity. So when we look at 196 plus 296 for annual concerns, it is shared. And we did want to reiterate the number of people that are in support of this system. I signed off under the emergency purchase agreement to begin a project within the courthouse for encrypted, essentially virtual court. Of course, that has to be encrypted. Of course, that was created by COVID as well. So I would make the distinct comparison between those two projects. And I know Director Fonstock is leading that project if he wants to add anything to that end.
Mr. Fostak?
So I think that one of the things that we've been dealing with from a technology perspective is that a lot of the telecommunication systems that we had used in the past had not been put under this type of requirement or stress related to privacy, related to health, and also related to juvenile people that are, not adults or underage. So one of the constant requests we get from the health department, human resources, court, state's attorney, public defender, I think court services, is how are we encrypting and making sure that especially the juvenile and health information is private, and that's through encryption. So the system that we have in place in the sheriff's radio right now as a VHF system doesn't have that capability. And in order to do that, there's a couple different options. One is to buy an entire system, try to implement and own it ourselves, which would probably take an inordinate amount of time and money. I think it was in capital costs somewhere double or 3 times the amount. But Motorola Starcom is an existing system. It's in place. It's something that you subscribe to. We do have to get radios for the officers, but the infrastructure would be maintained by Motorola, and you're subscribing to their network similar to like you would subscribe to a cell carrier. It's extensive. You can expand on it. You can add channels and add services for other offices and departments. I think one of the departments that was not mentioned in that list was the potential to extend it to KDOT too. So transportation could coordinate with the sheriff's office better if they need plow trucks or they need highway maintenance, those types of things. And we could also talk to some of the other agencies that may be looking for better, radio systems in the future. But the immediate issue is getting a subscription or a kind of ready-made, more instantaneous correction for encrypted radio. And I do think that there's great similarities to health, to judiciary for the need for the encryption. I think it's across the board.
Thank you, Mr. Feinstock. Sheriff Hain, before you continue on, I'd like to ask Ms. Guthrie if she'd like to have any comments or concerns about this and your feelings.
Sure, thank you. Just a couple additional comments. Operationally, prior to COVID, the way that we would get health information came directly from our responding agencies. So they would respond to a house, they would be advised of a situation at the house, and then they would tell us, their 911 center, please flag this address. So we know next time but the information was coming from them. COVID is unique because the information came from the health department. So they weren't in on it until they were responding to the address. They could have 10 addresses in their jurisdiction. They could have 100 addresses in their jurisdiction. They didn't know. That was up to us to tell them when they responded. As I've added in previous meetings, this is unique to KCOM and our dispatch because other surrounding radio systems are encrypted. So they have not had this challenge during this time.
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. Yes, Mr. McMahon, go ahead.
So we have been asked to look at this from a legal perspective as to whether the expenditure would comply with the CARES Act, the guidance from the Treasury Department. And we looked at this initially, and then after the sheriff's presentation about a week ago, I don't remember the exact date, we looked at it again in response to some additional information that the sheriff provided. And what I want to emphasize is that the need for a confidential or an encrypted communication system is clear. That has been well documented. Legally, the obstacle or the challenge to relating this to the use of CARES Act fund is that the issue of confidentiality is not exclusively related to COVID, and that's the connection that we need to make under the guidance from the Treasury Department to use CARES Act funds. We've heard from a couple people this morning about the need for confidentiality in the dissemination of juvenile information, of the movement of first responders, of their safety. All of those concerns existed pre-COVID and are not related to the COVID situation. Certainly the importance of communicating somebody's COVID status over an unencrypted communication system is problematic. The Department of Health and Human Services has provided some exceptions given the emergency nature of this situation. So we're not currently in violation of federal law. But the confidentiality of these communications is important for a lot of reasons unrelated to the COVID situation. So while I completely agree, we need an encrypted communication system. So when the 911 center dispatches whoever, first responders, law enforcement officers, they're responding to the situation following the George Floyd related protests a couple weeks ago. Their movements were being tracked publicly by people. That's unsafe for them, for all of us. But that's not related to COVID, and that's the legal challenge that we've identified of using CARES Act funds to make this acquisition. We absolutely, and I cannot emphasize that enough, we need an encrypted communication system in this county. But I don't know that we can use CARES Act funds to purchase that.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. I appreciate your opinion, and I appreciate the report that you sent out to everyone approximately a week ago or a number of days ago concerning this. I guess my question for you is, because I feel you're very sympathetic to the need for this, is what additional factual, I mean, we had 4 transmissions there where it was made public that they were responding to addresses and that were COVID positive.
Mm-hmm.
What additional information can we get to you in order to make sure that we meet the criteria that the CARES Act is requesting?
Well, I don't know that we're ever going to be able to get there, because if we replace the transmission of COVID status with the transmission of some other communicable disease, we still have a problem of sharing protected health information over an unencrypted communication system. And so, whether it's COVID or whether it's some other communicable disease or some other health event, that's being communicated publicly, and we can code that, but we're going to have to change codes on a regular basis because people are going to figure out the codes. They're going to broadcast that, either over the internet or some other form of communication, and we're going to be right back into this situation. The appellate court for the 2nd District in Illinois reviewed a lawsuit between the McHenry County Sheriff and the McHenry County Health Department. They ruled on that just the last couple of days of June, so we reviewed that. And the guidance from the courts has been that first responders should treat every response going into every location as if it's a COVID positive environment. That's expensive. That requires them to gear up and to go through extra steps. But that I don't know that we're going to be able to kind of clear that hurdle that COVID is the basis for the need for an encrypted communication system. We needed an encrypted radio or communication system a year ago, 6 months ago, and we're going to need it 6 months from now, even if there's a cure for this virus.
Well, thank you for your comments. Mr. McMahon, one other question for you, which I just found out in the last 24 hours, that your area has an encrypted system now. Was that COVID eligible? And if it was, how did that differentiate from this?
I'm not sure what you mean. My area has
I thought I thought Mr. Feinstock had mentioned,
I think what they're referring to, and I think the sheriff referred to, is the need to have remote teleconference, web conference capabilities. And one of the prime requirements was that it's encrypted. That was one of the requirements that was asked of us by the judges was, is this encrypted? Because we're going to be doing things with health or with juveniles or, you know, things that are maybe require privacy. So I guess the question would be what differentiates that requirement as a COVID expense versus anything else? Because we had discussed the ramifications of some of the technology that's being purchased. If it is not covered under COVID, do we need to stop doing some of those things because it's not directly response to COVID? It is part of the secondary, call it collateral effects of COVID, which in the U.S. Treasury guidelines discusses these secondary collateral effects of what COVID costs. It describes the primary costs, primary direct effects, but and it's not the act, it's the guidelines that they specify that says there's these secondary or tertiary or collateral costs. So what we're concerned about is how far do we go in supporting some of these initiatives before we realize that the obligation financially is on the county and not going to be a covered COVID expense, even though there's an emergency act of the board that authorized the sheriff and the health director to say, yes, you can purchase things under COVID versus, well, now when you go back legally and look at it, you're going to retract that and say, no, the county's on the hook. So at that point, I think you need to be concerned about where that capital money comes from if you're not going to be able to do those things.
Sure. So the change that COVID brought on in the judicial system, both in the courts and a lot of different offices, is the need to be able to perform essential functions remotely. COVID didn't change the need for us to have a 911 system. We've always had to have a 911 system. We've always had to have a radio communication system. And there have been longstanding needs for that communication system to be able to relay information, confidentiality, and to keep certain information confidential. Pre-COVID, we had to have a secure way of conducting court calls and communications, and we did that physically in courtrooms and in offices and over telephone lines. What COVID has brought on is the need for us to do that remotely. We didn't have to conduct, and we didn't have the ability to conduct remote court proceedings pre-COVID. We now have to be able to do that. Just like pre-COVID, this county board couldn't do remote board meetings. You now can conduct remote board meetings and still comply with the Open Meetings Act. So that's really the distinction, is that in the past, all of our operations and this body's operations were done face-to-face. Communications, radio communications and dispatch was always done over the radio. There were always deficiencies in the confidentiality aspects of that. COVID hasn't changed that. COVID has changed the way we have to conduct other operations, that we can no longer do those in person.
well, thank you, Mr. McMahon. And what I was trying to do is find a way to find more justification for us to get this program acquired through COVID or CARE funds. If you could, I would very much appreciate it, as would everybody, because we all realize the necessity of this new encrypted program. If you could look into this or see any ideas you may be able to come up with to help us get this eligible, or at least presumed eligible for CARES Act money, it would be greatly appreciated, because as you've said and everybody here has said, this is a much, much needed thing. And we would, quite honestly, I don't believe the county has the extra $4 or $5 million right now to do it. And we do have an exposure there. So anything you could do or your office could do to help us find a way to maybe make it somewhat acceptable would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, we'll continue to work on it. And I can't emphasize enough, we understand the need for the safety of people and the safe communication of information. We'll continue to look for a way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Fonsack. Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. Sheriff, I'm sorry we interrupted your presentation, but if you'd like to go on or anyone has any other comments on this before we move on, please feel free to let me know and we'll be happy to let you make your comment.
Yeah, just in closing, before we move to the resolution, so I would say with the comparison to virtual court, I would say virtual court is a luxury in that you can have 25 people in a room. Virtual court right now is something that is affording remoting while we could have people inside of a courtroom, certainly, and just a managed court call. I feel like we've presented a myriad of different examples of how this started when COVID started, and CARES Act funding allows us to pay for things that are impacted or an expense from COVID. We didn't have 10 to 12 calls a day. We weren't shifted into a humanitarian role where we were dealing with people with a pandemic issue. So I'm not sure what more evidence we can put forward. I really appreciate your sympathy for us to acquire a encrypted system, but again, to me, this was created by COVID, the issue that we're facing today.
Mr. Leonard?
Yes. Is
Hi,
this
Chris
Chairman
Lawson.
Yes.
Yes. For the file or for the record, we looked at the StarCom system through Motorola many years, probably every year in the 8 years that I've served in Kane County, and we always declined because it was not necessary. It was expensive. It was not necessary. Now, with the COVID and the heightened requirements, that's why we're here today. It is absolutely because of COVID that this is being moved forward. So, I mean, we looked at this. If we need to compile a file of it, it's a wonderful system, but just not necessary. We declined it repeatedly. And so if that would help in the structure, this has been made necessary because the fundamental nature of public safety and those calls, those assignments out into the field, that has basically changed. Public safety calls have basically changed to have a component of public health that they did not have before. And we considered it, declined it. COVID came, we moved it forward, absolutely due to COVID. Thank you, Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Chairman Lawson. You know, in concluding this segment here, I'd just like to say we've got a lot of great minds in this room, and I think if we can all work together, hopefully there is some way we can find a solution to this. Everyone knows it's necessary. Everybody wants it. We just have to find a way to make it eligible for the CARES Act. And so I'm asking everyone here on this committee throughout the county actually to study this, to look at this and see if there isn't some way, documentation, factual information that the state's attorney needs, or if the state's attorney's office could find other ways that we can get this eligible, it would be greatly appreciated. So we'll leave it at that. And I thank everyone for oh, Ms. Thomas, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to say that I'm in complete agreement with everyone here that if we can apply the CARES Act funding for this initiative, we certainly should. But the fact that King County is last in getting an encrypted communication system, I don't think bodes well. I mean, clearly, if others saw the need some time ago and already have those systems in place, I think that undermines our argument a bit.
Point well taken, Ms. Thomas. Thank you very much. And we are behind, and we need to move ahead on this as quickly as possible. And hopefully we can, one way or another, find a way to apply CARES Act money to it. And we'll just have to see what the future brings. So thank you all very much. Sheriff Hain, I'm sorry that we interrupted, but I thought there was need for discussion on that. So please go ahead.
No, I really appreciate everyone's input. And I think great point, Mr. Leonard, that a lot of great minds here that we all come together to come to a supportive resolution to it. I'm ready to move to the, I think we have four Well, I have 3 resolutions up today.
Yes. Sheriff, would you want to go over those one in a row? They're all a little bit different. We have 4 on the agenda, but I believe we are going to table one of those, move that to administration. Is that correct?
That would be the energy services agreement. We
Yes.
already discussed that. Yes. So we're down to
So
2 now that have been placed by me. I know Mr. Iqbal, or Dr. Iqbal, sorry. The support for police reforms, is that yours?
Yes,
Okay. So it's listed under,
I can move or you can move this.
okay, fair enough. So we'll start with the Alta Vista ARCS alert system.
Okay, if we could I have a motion and a second to discuss? Mr. Kenyon moves, Mr. Sanchez seconds. Please go ahead, Sheriff.
So to the point that we still have a lot of antiquated operations here at Kane County and under the Sheriff's Office, a lot of our paperwork is still on paper. So what this system does is it digitizes all of our documents, connects them to our mobile reporting system, and it gives us dashboarding as administrators and managers. So we're able to determine everything from detainee status and activity with that dashboard to employee sick calls, use of force issues, at our fingertips when we walk into work in the morning.
That'd be great. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Yes. Resolution is approved. Moving on to the next one, which is actually marked D on the agenda, expanding electronics GPS home monitoring service area. Sheriff?
So with the expansion of the EHM program, we are seeing additional defendants who live outside of Kane County. If you remember, the original resolution only asked for Kane County residents to be EHM candidates. So our staff is prepared to expand that to border counties, excluding Cook and Will. So it will be McHenry, DeKalb, Kendall, and DuPage where defendants are eligible.
In reading over the resolution, I saw that we're going to charge the same initial deposit and also the same daily fee. $250 is the initial deposit, $10 is the daily fee.
That's correct.
Any questions on that? Comments? If not, Gabby, please. I don't know, did we have a first and second? Okay, moved by Mr. Kenyon, seconded by Mr. Sanchez. No other discussion, then please roll call vote.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Leonard.
Yes. Moving on to our next resolution. We're going to need a motion and a second on that. Dr. Iqbal moves, seconded by
Thomas?
Ms. Thomas. We are on E now, yes. C, we're going to table that, but we'll get a vote on that. Okay, Sheriff Hain, with respect to the Kane County Board support for police reforms, would you please review that with the committee?
I'd like to defer that to Dr. Iqbal if he wants to discuss that.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay.
Dr. Iqbal?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you recall, about 2 months ago, we saw the grisly and inhumane vision played out in which George Floyd was killed. We saw him struggling for his breath at the hand of Minneapolis police officer who kept him handcuffed, pinned to the ground, and with a knee on his neck. Political leaders and law enforcement officials all over the nation have condemned Floyd's killing, and the cry for justice on his behalf has been very loud and eloquent. Every day, people all across this nation of all races are seeking to understand how this could happen in America in 2020. However, this is not an isolated event. It wasn't. We have seen many incidents of police killing like Laquan McDonald, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, Elijah McClain, and the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, and many more. We can call these killings tragic, brutal, abhorrent, and senseless, but the words won't change the reality. We need to understand the underlying issue and work to solve it. As Mayor Richard Daley once said, police does not create disorder, it simply preserves it. It's our job to fix the issues. As you have seen, we had several weeks of public protest demanding real societal change to end systematic racism and police brutality. And then these protests spiraled into destructive rioting and looting in the cities across the nation, and Kane County was no exception. The act of such violence and destruction are also something no American should condone. Our elected official from Washington to here in Kane County have been responding to the sustained call for justice. They have been focusing on political solutions and actions to bring lasting and true police reforms. As you know, Mr. Chairman, putting an end to a systematic racism here or anywhere in the nation requires to step up and take initiative. As a first step, we need to be clear what we expect from our police force and then provide him with the training and proper tools. And this resolution is in that direction. It's not a mandatory resolution, it's a precatory, it's suggestion, it's encouragement. But it shows our resolve, what we need as a community from our police force. So, as you know, we are very fortunate here in Kane County that Sheriff Hain and Honorable Mr. McMahon both are very supportive of these reforms. And I thank them. And as you know, some of the measures that this resolution is calling for are already in place. With this, I respectfully ask you, Mr. Chairman, and ask my colleagues to support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iqbal. Very eloquently said, and I think it covered what we as a county want to not only perform but implement. You know, I think some of the issues stated in this resolution, as you stated, are already being implemented by the King County Sheriff's Office. You know, the chokehold, applying force to a person around their neck is something that I know the Sheriff's Department already uses. The implementation of body-worn cameras and dashboard cameras will help immensely. And then finally, I think with internal and external investigations, that's very important too. So any discussions on this resolution by anyone on the committee? Yes, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first would just like to thank Dr. Iqbal for bringing this resolution forward. And I would like to just draw attention to one section where it talks about King County aspires to be a leader and model for communities throughout Illinois. And I really think that this resolution is consistent with the programs that we've seen come from the Sheriff's Office under Sheriff Hain and with the leadership he has brought to the office since being elected. You just made a statement, but I would like to clarify and hear directly from the sheriff. Policy has been changed with respect, or never existed perhaps, with regards to chokeholds. Could you just go on the record and state where we are? This resolution is excellent with respect to where we need to be, but I just want to know what work needs to be done. So where are we with respect to
So
chokeholds?
historically in our use of force policy, it bans the use of any pressure to the neck or above the neck. So this existed before George Floyd. And for the public's convenience, we placed our use of force policy PDF on the homepage of our website. And it's still there if you'd like to stop by and reference it.
Okay.
Anything else, Ms. Thomas?
No, that's all. And I again, I just appreciate that we are going on record with setting a standard. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful resolution. One other clarification I'd like to make with respect to no force to the neck or above area. That has been in force now since Sheriff Haynes been in office. So it's been, 18, 19 months that I know of for sure.
Even before I can't take credit for that one.
Okay, great.
It's historic.
So that's something that we've been practicing for a while now, which is wonderful to hear. Any other discussion, comments on this resolution? If not, Gabby, would you please do a roll call?
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Leonard.
Yes. Resolution passes, and thank you, Dr. Iqbal, for all your work and your care and concern about this. It's much needed to have something in our program that shows that we are very concerned with doing things properly. So I thank you very much for your time. We have one other resolution that we need to table, and that was authorizing an energy services agreement with Kane County. We'd like to move that to the administration office, so I need a motion and a second on that. Moved by Mr. Sanchez, seconded by Mr. Martin. Any discussion on that?
Or is it a motion to move?
Okay, then I guess we don't have to vote on the table.
We do, just no discussion on a table.
Oh, okay.
What is it, a motion to table it or a motion to move it to another committee?
We're tabling in this committee and asking it be moved to the administration.
Mr. Chair, wouldn't it be clearer to just move it to administration? I mean, it's
So we
not,
shouldn't really table it. We
I
should
don't think
just.
so, because we're saying it doesn't belong here now.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
yes.
Lingering around.
If you table it, it stays here. If you want to move it to administration, then the proper motion would be to move it, second it to administration, and then call for a vote on the move to
All right,
administration.
I'd like to amend the motion to move it to administration. Moved by Dr. Iqbal, seconded by Mr. Sanchez. And once again, it's great having so many great minds in here because when I make mistakes, it's always nice to know how we should handle it properly. So thank you all for your help on that. In moving it, we can discuss that. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, please do the roll, Gabby.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes. Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Leonard.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else, Sheriff Haynes?
I apologize to all my fellow reporters to this committee for that taking so long, but thank you for your patience. And I have to run to union negotiations, so I apologize for leaving early as well.
Thank you for your being here and presenting everything. We appreciate your presence.
Thank you.
Moving on, we'll go to the judiciary and courts. Chief Judge Hall.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. As Mr. McMahon has stated, the next big step for the court system on the criminal side is the resumption of jury trials. Just to kind of bring you up to speed, the goal here is to do it in a manner in which we can make sure that everybody's safe when they come in. And so the biggest change is when we start with jury trials, we're bringing citizens as jurors into the courthouse, and that causes a lot of different issues and a lot of different concerns. What the staff did, and again, as the county board, when you look and we think about what you've entrusted us to do and empowered us to do through budgetary and whatnot, the very first thing we had to do is work collectively together to figure out where we could hold jury trials. So based upon the guidelines put forth by the Illinois Department of Public Health and in cooperation with Barb Jeffers, who came over and actually walked the building with us, I can't say enough about how wonderful she and her staff have been. We walked through the entire judicial center because we're starting first with criminal juries to try to look at our deliberation rooms, our courtrooms, to figure out where could we hold a jury trial. When we did that at the judicial center, there was only one courtroom that was large enough to hold a jury trial, and that was our ceremonial courtroom in courtroom 201. So on any given Monday before COVID, we would have 5 felony courtrooms that would have jury trials. Now we're down to the ability to just do 1. In addition, when we call in jurors pre-COVID, we would typically bring in somewhere between 150 to 200 jurors to come in. Those jurors would then get sent out to the different courtrooms. Based upon the size and social distancing, we can only have 49 jurors in our jury assembly room. So the impact, going back to what you had talked about, Mr. Martin, as far as backlog and whatnot, the issue that the court system has to face is that instead of having 5 felony courtrooms where we could have trials on every Monday, those 5 felony courtrooms now can only have 1 trial collectively. So what we've been doing is working with the public defender's office, the state's attorney's office, the jury commission to try to figure out how we are going to go about this. And obviously there's been a lot of planning. And now, as I said last time, now it comes down to execution, and we're all working together to do that. Going again to the backlog, we are probably in about the middle, maybe a little bit ahead of the pack, but there have been Winnebago and McHenry have already conducted jury trials. So the first concern was, would jurors come in? What they learned is that the citizens of their counties, and I'm sure the citizens of King County will be the same, they're willing to come in, provided that we can show them that we have taken the necessary precautions to be able to protect them. And so the way that we've done that is, again, with everybody, clerk's office, whatnot, we have sent out to potential jurors with their summons pictures of how we have changed our courtrooms, how we have changed the jury assembly room. So when they come in, they know that we have protections in place to make sure that they're safe. When they do come in, then the issue is, how do we get them up into the courtroom? We've modified courtroom 201 to include a closed circuit camera because we have to have, it has to be, a trial has to be accessible to the public. Because our jury boxes are, the chairs are screwed in and we don't have the option of changing that around. What we're going to have to do is have our jury sit back where the gallery, where the citizens would typically sit in order to do social distancing. What that does is prevent any citizen from coming in to watch the trial. So the solution to that was working with IT to have a closed circuit. So we'll have a feed into another courtroom so that if members of the public want to come in and see the trial, they're not going to be in the actual trial, but they'll be able to watch it, which is a solution that is not only being utilized throughout the state of Illinois, but throughout the country. But again, going to the backlog and talking to McHenry's chief judge and Winnebago's chief judge, they both emphasize that the key is the ability to hold the trial. So each of those 5 courtrooms are still setting jury trials. They're going to have a final jury trial setting on the Thursday before the Monday. And so the hope is, and this is where we've had a lot of conversations with both Ms. Conant and Mr. McMahon, the hope is that even though we can only do 1 trial in courtroom 201, the fact that the people coming in who have their cases set for trial are not sure whether it's going to be their trial or another trial, that may get them to make decisions and to resolve cases, because that's the issue that we have. The case count's going up. We need cases to get resolved, and this is going to be a mechanism to do that. So just going through, we're going to have 1 jury trial, 1 12-person jury trial on Mondays. We're going to have 1 6-person jury trial on Tuesdays. Because of the 6-person, we can use a regular courtroom. That's going to be for misdemeanor, that's DV and domestic violence and DUI. And then on Wednesdays, we're going to have a 2nd jury trial. As it relates to budgeting, the issue that we've identified with security with the circuit clerk's office is that typically on a typical jury trial week, what would happen is the jury trial would commence at 8:30. We would finish at 4:30. We would go through that. And then on the night that they had to deliberate, they may be required to stay there past 4:30. Because we have to have another jury trial set and ready to go on Wednesday, we're preparing our staff, Ms. Conant, Mr. McMahon, Tom Hartwell, court reporters. Everybody's prepared and understands that on Monday we're not going to finish at 4:30. We need to get that trial done, or most trials done, in 2 days. So that means that we may be working late into Monday night and late into Tuesday night, and we've let the jurors know that as well. The last thing that we do to try to prepare the citizens of King County when they get their summons is we were able to work with a videographer who is a local graduate to prepare 2 juror videos that are going to be able to be accessed. That 1 talks about all the safety precautions that we've put in, and then 2 describe what they're usually, when a juror comes up to the courtroom, we spend the first half hour kind of explaining the whole process to them. We put it together a video that's going to do that, so that that's not time that judges have to spend. So the idea now is when the jurors hit the courtroom at 8:30, that we're ready to go. So again, I know it's been heard repeatedly, but I can't thank the Public Defender's Office, the State's Attorney's Office, the Clerk's Office, Security. We've all been working together. And so really, we're 2.5 weeks away. We feel like we're prepared. We understand that there's going to be some zigs and zags those weeks, but we feel like we've done everything that we can to be prepared for that. So that's on the criminal side, that's where we're at. On the civil side, criminal, when we talk about the criminal and civil side of things, criminal, there's due process rights. There's people that are obviously incarcerated. So that's where the priority lies. On the civil side, it's kind of considered more of a privilege to be in court than a right. So that's why everybody's focused first on criminal and not civil. Civil juries are ready to start up on September 8th, but they would be only 6-person jurors. In talking to former Chief Judge Bowles, who's now the presiding judge of the Civil Division, she's indicated that the attorneys, unlike on the criminal side where people are pushing for their trials, on the civil side, they're not seeing the same thing. So they don't expect to be back in court actually doing it. So that's where we're at with jury trials. I have some other things to talk about, but I don't know if anybody has any questions about the criminal jury trials. Okay, great. The next thing is when we look at the planning and what we've talked about over at the courthouse, but I think what's important for the county board to know is the number one question that I get as the chief judge from the attorneys is when are we going to go back to normal? When can we stop doing remote hearings? When can we all come back to court? And so I'm taking my guidance not only from the Illinois Department of Public Health and considering everything that Kane County's doing, but really as a third branch of government, we take our direction from the Illinois Supreme Court. And so the Illinois Supreme Court has held meetings where myself and chief judges throughout the state have been on meetings with the Supreme Court justices and the Administrative Office of Illinois Courts to try to get some direction from them as to expectations and where we're at. Right now, based upon what they're talking about, we don't expect this current system to change in this calendar year at all. So when we're talking to the attorneys and to the Public Defender's Office and everybody else, the schedule that we have and what we're doing right now, we anticipate being in place at an absolute minimum until the end of this calendar year. And based upon conversations, and I read the same reports you guys do, I think it's unlikely that we're going to switch back, on January 1st. So all our planning as it relates to how we're getting cases through the system, how to address the backlog, what we need to do is all based upon the fact that the current systems we have in place are going to have to continue to be in place. And the only thing I would say is, Mr. Fonstock or Sheriff Hain made a comment about, the remote court being a luxury, and I would have to respectfully disagree. The Illinois Supreme Court gave us direction that we had to limit and that we could not hold court or that we shouldn't hold court. And so without Roger, without IT, especially in the beginning, we would not have been able to do and provide access to the court. So just as it relates to that, I can't thank Roger and his department enough because without IT, the court system and without what the county's provided as it relates to, the terminals and computers and whatnot, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. So, and we continue to figure out ways to expand our ability to serve the litigants and the attorneys in King County and to provide access to court. Last thing is that ultimately, we had our first situation where we had 2 COVID positives. We had an attorney who notified us that he was in our court system after testing positive. That was at the Judicial Center. We had another situation at 3rd Street where we were told that somebody was COVID positive that had been in the building. What I can tell you is that every system and the kind of the SOP that we had put in place with Barb Jeffers worked fantastic. One of the things that Barb emphasized us to do was that contact tracing. With the help of everybody, we have, when people come to court, we have them fill out a form to indicate that they've been there on that date and time, and we collect those and keep those for 30 days. In this situation, because of that, and it's not easy to do, but Barb recommended that we do it. In the situation that we had, we were able to go to the courtroom that he was at. We were able to pull the contact forms. We were able to give those to Barb Jeffers in the health department, and she was able to immediately make contact with not only the court employees from King County who were there, but also everybody else that had contact, which allowed us then to make very, very, very quick decisions, which 1, allowed certain people to be tested and 2, quarantined other people so that we didn't have an additional spread. So the SOP that was put into place at Barb's recommendation worked fantastic. So I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Dr. Iqbal?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chief Judge, I have a few questions. Number one, at the presentation, the task force presentation, Mr. Naughton mentioned that the additional cost to the court for CARES Act were $130,000. I believe the cost would be a lot more. So I request that you reconsider it and see if they're embedded somewhere else or not. I realize that there would be cost for IT upgrades, which, Roger is doing it. I hope he will get approval. But this 130,000, I think, should be more based on what you just.
And I will say that, one of the things from not only Chairman Lawson, but from the board was the instruction was to keep records of everything that we were spending, COVID-related expenses. And we've tried to do that. I will make sure that Mr. Naughton continues to audit what we're doing to try to do that. A lot of, again, is it's cooperation with Roger. We've ordered laptops, we've had OWL systems in place, we've had monitors that have been in there. So I appreciate that, and I will make sure that we continue to audit that and even look back to see if there were additional costs.
Anything else from the committee or anyone else? Seeing and hearing none, thank you very
Okay,
much,
thank you.
Chief Judge. Appreciate the report and all the great work you and the court system are doing there with the help of the public defender, state's attorney, and all the other people. Moving on to Court Services Administration, Ms. Osprey, I'd like to qualify her before she speaks. It seems like every time she gives a report, it's something good. I'm hopeful that will happen again, but we'll see. Ms. Osprey, please go ahead.
Oh, it's like you're psychic. So I'm happy to report that the Administrative Office of Illinois Courts has informed us that our funding is going to go ahead and be fully funded again for next year, which is awesome. We were waiting on that budget news from the state. Additionally, they are fully, I have been given notice and I forwarded it. I had hoped to bring a resolution today, and I apologize because I don't have the monetary amount down to the exact dollar figure. However, they're going to additionally be funding 6 staff at the grants and aid level, which is fully funded except for the county's match for the benefits portion. Those 6 staff are currently in place, but they were only funded at $1,000 a month each, or $12,000 total a year each. So that's going to be wonderful. So that'll be an additional 240,000-ish. So I'll bring that resolution and I'll talk about that at our budget presentation next week as well. So that's additional money to the county's general fund. In addition to that, I have been lobbying the administrative office for some time now for additional staff for the Juvenile Justice Center. We have striven, and in fact, we talked extensively back in 2014 and 2015 about the Prison Rape Elimination Act. And the JJC has recently undergone an audit and it's looking very favorable. And so the AO wants to continue to support our efforts, and they're going to give us funding for 3 additional staff beginning July 1. So Mr. Davis and his crew are in process. They've posted for that and they're interviewing for that. So that's awesome. So those are 9 positions that the administrative office out of Springfield is going to be funding for Kane County. And I'm thrilled about that.
That is wonderful news. These grants that you've gotten in the past and all the other things you've done have been very nice. But what we're looking at here are hundreds of thousands of dollars to help Kane County. And I thank you very much for your work and Mr. Davis's work on that. Any questions for Ms. Ost? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Ost. Appreciate the report. Moving on to the juvenile justice system, Mr. Davis.
Good morning. Like Lisa said, we recently had a PREA audit and it went very well. The only area of concern was we need to have additional staffing on the 3rd shift, which is why Lisa went to the AOIC and requested the additional funds, which we're very excited to have. So I should be getting you that PREA report sometime soon. Like I said, everything went really well. Our population at the Juvenile Justice Center is actually trending a little bit higher than our 2-year average right now. A lot of that has to do with the courts hearing more cases. We're seeing more warrants, more court-ordered detentions. This while our screening instrument for admissions, our modified screening instrument is still in place that we started during the initial stages of the COVID-19 virus. So a lot of it has to also do with, as the sheriff mentioned, the Illinois Department of Juvenile Justice, which is the equivalent of prison for kids. They were not accepting kids for a long time that had been sentenced. They are accepting kids now, but they're taking them in cohorts. So we only get an opportunity from our facility to transfer kids once a month approximately. So there are 5 kids in our facility right now who are awaiting transfer to IDJJ. All of those kids are out of county, so we are still collecting a per diem rate from the counties that are housing those kids. So we're at 40 kids today, which puts us at the second most behind Cook County for county-run detention centers in the state. But everything's going well. We don't have any confirmed cases of COVID-19 in our building, and we continue to move forward. So aside from that, my report's on file if anyone has any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Davis? You know, if not, Mr. Davis, I appreciate the report. You kind of slipped this in very subtly, and I think it's important for everybody to know. Our juvenile justice system here in Kane County houses the second most number of detainees of any county in the state, only second to Cook County. So it's quite an important operation, and you're doing a great job. So thank you very much, Mr. Davis. I appreciate it, and I commend you on handling everything as well as you have, especially considering the COVID situation right now.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to KaneCom, Ms. Guthrie.
Yes, thank you. Before I get into the good news and exciting announcements from today, I just want to circle back real quick and provide a couple facts on the radio system where we are now, just some
Certainly.
history and in comparison to other agencies around us. So 2 agencies, so we have 5 dispatch centers in King County. 2 of the agencies went to an encrypted system years ago. They just did it as part of their upgrade. Our 2 other neighboring agencies recently have gone to this encrypted system because they use what's called a UHF band. It is an ultra high frequency band on the radio system. The FCC gave notice that they were going to discontinue that band. Because they were discontinuing it, that gave them the push to go find another option, which led them to Starcom. We are on a VHF system, which means that we are not going to have a radio system discontinued. So we have worked to make improvements over the years. We were able to stay on the system that we've been using, and we simply haven't explored this before because we didn't have to. We've talked to our neighboring agencies about upgrading to Starcom, but because we were functional and because our telecommunicators work very, very, very hard every day, adhering to our policies and procedures, and as much professional, private information as we can keep limited to the radio system, that's what we've done in the past. So I just wanted to answer that question and highlight why we are in the place that we are right now. But exciting news to share today. We went live with our upgraded 911 phone system. The system cut over at 6 a.m. this morning and is working well. If you see me on my phone constantly, I'm talking to staff to make sure we're still doing well. Just a huge thank you to Roger's team for the assistance in this very technical upgrade. Specifically, Pat Feldner from his team has just been a great resource, not only for us, but also for TRICOM. This upgrade does still include the Viper connection between our center and TRICOM. The 2 of our centers back each other up. So if something were to happen to our building over here and our phone system was still intact, I could go over to TRICOM, log into the phone system, and our phones would ring there. They can do the same at our center. So this was all part of a redundant backup plan and new hardware and new software, and we're next generation 911 ready. And this fulfills also the grant that we got for the phone system as well.
So this new 911 phone system started today at 6 a.m.?
It did. It's called Intrado. We've had the Intrado Viper system in place since 2014. And this is just an upgrade with the latest and greatest hardware and software.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's a great testament to your staff too, that you're able to attend this meeting, still manage with them and implement this new program this morning. So thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Guthrie? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Guthrie. We
Thank you.
appreciate your report. Merit Commission, is there a report from the Merit Commission? Seeing and hearing none, We'll move on to the circuit clerk.
Hi, good morning. Karen Herwick for Tom Hartwell. He's out of town. He just became a grandfather for the first time, so he is spending a little bit of family time. So I will put our report on file, and one of the things that I'll highlight this morning is we are starting to see an increase, almost doubling our phone calls and stuff like that. So as the courts and everything starts to get what we all know might be a new norm, or do we need to go to court remotely? Are we going to court in person? There's a lot of new questions coming from the public, and phone calls are really coming in, particularly in our criminals division. But then also we're seeing a lot with civil, because mostly everything that is getting done in civil is being done through sending agreed orders, anything that's uncontested, through queues that we've set up and worked with the judges on, where they can then, in the civil division and domestic, where they can then file their motions and then have their cases heard, send their orders to the judges. The judges then send it back to the clerk signed using DocuSign, and then we are entering it onto the case management system and filing it, saving extra steps where we're getting it entered quicker because we're not having to send it to a separate area for imaging and stuff. So we are continuing to evolve as all of the needs of the courts are rolling. We're moving in all kinds of directions and making changes. And what we do today, our staff is having to be really flexible as the courts changes, everything changes, just like all of the judicial offices. We're just rolling, and things are changing daily, and it's been for the good. And you know, the feedback that we are getting from attorneys and people that are calling, and I know they want to go to court. We all want to be back to what we knew as a normal. They're accepting the new normal, and they're actually finding it to be convenient for their offices and staff as well. And we're seeing that with the public that's also joining these Zoom calls and doing things. So I think that as the circuit clerk's office, working with the justice partners has been fantastic through all of this, and we continue to have day-to-day communication so that we can provide what's needed to be as efficient for the record-keeping part of things and what meet their needs.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the circuit clerk's office? I want to thank you for all the additional work that your office is going through and performing. And I also wanted to mention that I'm very happy to see Mark put up on the screen for me the collections. I kind of watch that every month, and to receive $346,000 plus back in non-receivables or hard to collect receivables is great. So if you would please pass on to Mr. Hartwell our appreciation of that too.
I will do so.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the public defender, Ms. Conant.
Thank you. Good morning. As you can see from our report, our numbers are starting to kind of tick back up. I think that that is a result of two things. One is that people are now being able to get back into the courthouse and make that request to have the public defender. Additionally, I think, which we are going to see, I think a lot more in the future, is a result of people losing jobs as from the shutdown. So our numbers have started to pick back up, but we are working diligently, not only with the state's attorney's office, but with the judiciary to work out ways that we can try to get those cases into court and to get them disposed so that all of our numbers will go down. We continue to have our table out front of the judiciary. So anyone who comes from a criminal case, they do check in with us. We have found that to be very beneficial to us. We are getting contact information from clients that we may have lost touch with during the shutdown. So that has been very beneficial to us. We also are at that time encouraging the use of Zoom court and kind of explaining that to people that are unfamiliar with it. So I think that is going to be a help to continue to keep people out of the courthouse for public safety reasons. We are also excited this week. We got our DocuSign accounts, so we are starting that. We will, that is another tool that will be very beneficial to us and to our clients, because our clients will be able to do their pleas now over Zoom, which will mean that they don't have to take off from work. We have had, it is kind of interesting, but we have had clients who now have had the benefit of they can do their plea on their lunch break or their work break, so they're not losing that time at work, but they're still getting their obligations to the court taken care of.
Thank you, Ms. Conant. Any questions for our public defender? If not, I'd like to thank you for all your work, and once again, coming into this position during this time, I know would be challenging without the pandemic, but with that, thank you very much for all your work. And
Mr. Chairman, could I interrupt before you finish with just to add on to what you just said? I mean, I wanted to echo that, one of the things that all the presiding judges, and I talked to Mr. Sanchez, he came to me one time and talked about it, but I wanted to share with you, and the comment was, I'd love to, when you share good news with what's going on, we'd like to stay more in tune. And so one of the things that all the judges have commented on with the public defender's office over the course of the last 3 months is the cooperative nature of Ms. Conant. You lead from the top down. And so she'll never say it out loud, but I just want to tell you as county board members how proud we are of her and what she's done since coming in. And when you say lead from the front, one of the comments that I've received from the presiding judges and the judges around are, number one, when we were only having court, it was an emergency, we only had 4 judges in the entire building. We had bond call. Ms. Conant was there doing bond call almost every day. Not her assistants, not asking. She was leading up front. We have this tent out in the front where we're trying to keep people from coming in the building. She isn't assigned. I mean, there's other people down there, but she's down there on a consistent basis, not seeing how the people are doing, but actually doing it and providing customer service with a smile and helping out. On top of that, she's been working with Mr. McMahon and the court system and the clerk's office to try to make things happen. So it's not obstacles, it's solutions. And I just look at what you had just said, and the reason I wanted to comment on it was, if we didn't have someone in that position like we have had the last 3.5 months that wanted to work cooperatively, we could be in a much different place. And so she represents her clients, her staff represents their clients, but to be able to have a partner who's trying to work with all of us is just really, really, the difference is massive. So I just want to make sure that from the chief judge's perspective, we let you as county board members know everybody's doing a fantastic job, but what Ms. Conant has had to face coming into an office, transition, and then deal with this has really been a mountain that she's doing a great job climbing. So on behalf of the judiciary, I just want to publicly thank her.
Thank you, Chief Judge. Ms. Conant?
I would just like to thank the judge for those very kind words, but it is a group effort, and I have received nothing but kindness and offers of help from all of our judicial partners, and that has been a tremendous support to me.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. And one last comment, Chief Judge, I think you should applaud all the judges who elected Ms. Conant to that position, because it was a very good choice, and we thank you for that decision. Thank you again, Ms. Conant. Moving on to the coroner, Mr. Russell is not able to be here today. His report is on file. There was a resolution concerning the 2020 budget adjustment that he wanted us to table to the next meeting. So I need a motion and a second to table that. Moved by Mr. Kenyon, seconded by Dr. Iqbal. If we could have a roll call, Gabby?
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon? Yes. Lewis? Lewis? Martin?
Yes.
Sanchez?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
And Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Martin.
I have a question relative to this budget adjustment when it does appear. Haven't we customarily done these at the end of the year? Or,
Generally speaking, yes. However, these are related to COVID.
okay,
So
okay.
he asked,
I
that
just
he'd
wanted
like
to-
to make the
I just
presentation.
wanted to be consistent with,
Certainly.
okay.
I appreciate the comment. Unfortunately, there is no need for executive session, which I know disappoints all of us. I do need a motion and a second to place our reports on file. Moved by Dr. Iqbal, seconded by Mr. Sanchez. Roll call, please.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Lewis? Martin?
Yes.
Sanchez?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Leonard?
Yes. And then finally, we can have a voice vote on this per the instruction from Mr. McMahon, our state's attorney. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I guess we need a motion a second first. Moved by Mr. Kenyon, second by Mr. Sanchez, and now, yes, sir.
All the time I've been part of this committee, this is probably one of the best news meetings ever. Things that have come out of it. I mean, the dark times we're in,
Yes.
things are running smoothly. I can't count.
And one last thing, now that we have a motion and a second, before we adjourn, I'd just like to, and I keep forgetting to do this every month, is thank Mr. Fonstock for all his work. Everyone mentions it all the time. I've been remiss in not mentioning it, so I'd like to thank you, Roger, for all the work you do for all of us.
Absolutely.
Now, a voice call on the adjournment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you all very much.
So John, the Illinois football joke?
Just a little bit.